Anjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Bitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindabaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna. I am very grateful to be with all of you this evening. Maharaj, thank you for blessing us with your divine presence. When Srila Prabhupada was a small boy, 7, 8 years old, he would urge his father and mother to help him celebrate the Ratha Yatra of Jagganath, a festival that has been taking place for thousands of years in the holy town of Puri, on the shore of the Bay of Bengal in the state of Orissa. He wanted to perform that festival where there is 3 massive chariots built every year. Over 700 trees, full-grown trees, are utilized to provide the wood for those chariots. They make them brand new every year. And after the return Ratha Yatra, they use the wood, after disassembling the chariots, to cook for Lord Jagganath in the temple. Even at that time, Srila Prabhupada wanted to transport this great culture outside of Puri to the major cities of the world. He began in the little alleyways of Calcutta. His father met a lady who had some sort of a little wagon type of a chariot, very small. And she sold it to them for a very cheap price. At first they couldn't find anything suitable. But little Abai was so determined, he wouldn't give up. We must have this Ratha Yatra. They were going all around Calcutta looking for a suitable wagon, but they couldn't find anything. But he was determined. His father kept searching. Finally, a lady saw how eager this boy was. She said, I have something, take it. And he assembled his neighborhood friends and their parents and relatives. They decorated it. He was dancing through the streets of Calcutta, offering artis, offering bhoga, chanting the holy names. And some years later, I believe it was about 1968, he inaugurated the first Ratha Yatra in San Francisco, California. First time this festival has ever been celebrated outside of India. And he renamed San Francisco as New Jagganath Puri. Perhaps in the heavenly planets, that's what's the name on the map for that place. And he brought it to every major city in the world, practically. But the crescendo of that compassionate effort was when Srila Prabhupada was riding on the chariot of Subhadra on Fifth Avenue through Manhattan of New York City. Because in 1965, about 9 years before, actually 11 years, the Ratha Yatra was 76, I believe. So 11 years before Prabhupada came to New York City. He was penniless. He knew no one. He was shifting place to place, sometimes in the Bowery, sometimes in another place. He was being robbed. He had heart attacks. He had strokes. He was 70 years old. But he had a dream. A dream that Krishna would attract the hearts of the people of New York City. Can you imagine a little man 70 years old from Bengal, from Vrindavan actually, in this massive city of New York? When I was young, one of my favorite songs, in those times I was living in a little village north of Chicago. But the song was called "There Is No Pity in the Naked City." How many of you have heard that song? I won't go into any details. But the song made me cry. This person is just weeping in this song about how when you don't have money, nobody cares about you, you're just being run over and bashed and nobody cares. And you're just a little like an insect in this massive city. There's so much passion. Now when I think back of that song, I think of Srila Prabhupada. In the city without pity upon those who are lone and forgotten. But he never gave up. He tried to start something, it got taken away. He tried to start something else, he got robbed. He tried to start something else, he was kicked out with death threats. His god brothers, his friends, his well-wishers in India, just come back. You tried, that's good enough. It's impossible. But he had faith. Faith in the name of Krishna. And faith in the love of the Lord. And 11 years later, Lord Jagganath, Baladev and Subhadra, on 3 magnificent chariots, were being pulled through Fifth Avenue. And the New York police force was acting as the servants of Lord Jagganath, closing the roads, clearing the streets for Jagganath's procession. If hundreds and hundreds of devotees were dancing and singing and playing so many mridangas and karatals and conch shells and horns, prasad distribution for thousands and thousands, Prabhupada addressed the city, I think in Washington Square Park. And this Rath Yatra has been celebrated every year since then. I was asked to say a few words to prepare our consciousness to understand the meaning of Rath Yatra. Lord Chaitanya, in his teachings and his pastimes, he taught us the innermost depths of the spirit of Rath Yatra. It is simultaneously the simplest public festival where people sing and people dance and people throw flowers and people eat. It's like people do that at so many festivals, yes? But this is centered around love and devotion to the Supreme Lord. At the same time, this Rath Yatra represents the innermost movement of divine love of the heart of Sri Radharani toward Krishna in separation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us a clear understanding of every level of what Rath Yatra really is. One day, Lord Chaitanya approached, or he called for, 3 people. Kashi Mishra, Tulasi, the superintendent of Jagannath's temple, and I believe it was one other. And he told them that tomorrow I want to cleanse the Gundicha temple. I beg your permission to do so with my devotees. This in itself is profound. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the supreme absolute truth, the most munificent avatar of Krishna, who has descended into this world with all of his potencies. But in the role of a devotee, he is begging permission. And these are the exact words from the scripture. He begged permission to perform this menial service of cleaning the temple. Tulsi, the superintendent, he said, it is not befitting for you to be cleaning and washing the temple. We can do that. The Lord Chaitanya was insistent. Not only him, he wanted to bring his most exalted followers, avatars, acharyas, paramhamsas. They said, but if you insist on doing so, you'll need at least 100 brooms and 100 buckets of water. We will supply them first thing in the morning. Lord Chaitanya woke up in a very happy mood. He went to Gundicha temple. And all of his close associates assembled there. And Lord Chaitanya, he gave each one of them, with his own hand, a broom. And instructed them, I want you to sweep out every single particle of straw, dust, and sand until it is immaculately clean. Then we will wash the temple. They were sweeping and sweeping. And Lord Chaitanya himself, he was so enthusiastic to perform this very menial service of sweeping. And in India, traditionally, they don't have brooms like we do. Our brooms have wooden handles. In India, it's just straw. Hard, stiff straw that's just tied together on the top. Ready? And you have to get down on your hands and knees and sweep. That's the way Lord Chaitanya was sweeping the temple. They swept the floors, they swept the altar, they swept the kitchen, they swept the ceilings, they swept the walls, they swept every aspect of the temple. And Lord Chaitanya was so enthusiastic. It appeared that he had 100 arms. He was going so fast. He was so determined to make that temple clean. Then he had everyone, then the Lord himself took the pile of what he swept and put it in, he wrapped it up in the cloth that he was wearing and brought it outside and dumped it. Srila Prabhupada explains that by wrapping it in his cloth, he was showing his commitment, his personal commitment and devotion to this cause. Then all the other devotees, they started wrapping whatever they collected in their cloths and brought it outside. And they were going back and forth, and after some time, when the temple was really clean, all the devotees put all the dirt, the dust, the sand, and the straw in one pile, and Lord Chaitanya put his in a separate pile, and his was hundreds of times bigger than all of theirs together. It appeared the temple was perfectly clean. Sri Chaitanya then said, now let us go back with our brooms and search for finer particles of dust, sand, and straw. They cleaned until it was utterly immaculate and brought it all outside. Then he had them clean the outside of the temple. Meanwhile, there was 100 devotees standing with clay pots filled to the brim with water, just waiting for the order. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the order. And One devotee gave Lord Chaitanya the first pot, and he began to toss the water, bucket after bucket after bucket, on the ceiling, on the walls, on the Lord's throne, in the kirtan hall, in the kitchen, everywhere. And he was throwing and throwing and throwing and throwing. He kept throwing more and more water everywhere, cleaning and cleaning. And soon all the devotees started taking pots of water. And as each pot was empty, they ran back to the lake, which was not far away, called Indrajumana Sarovar, and they filled it up with more water. In this way, there was at least 100 people running back and forth with pots of water. And sometimes they were running with such enthusiasm that they would accidentally run into each other, and the pots would break. So there were hundreds of men going out buying new pots and bringing them, filling them up. They were washing everything, everywhere. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was so absorbed in this service, knowing that he was cleaning the temple of the Lord for the pleasure of the Lord. Tears were pouring out from his eyes faster than they could fill up the pots of water. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was cleaning the temple with the tears of his eyes. And with his own cloth, he was rubbing and polishing and cleaning and rubbing and polishing and cleaning. And all the devotees, all they said was Krishna, Krishna. There was no other sound. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was sweeping and cleaning, he was loudly chanting the holy names in great ecstasy, and following his example, everyone was chanting Krishna, Krishna. That's the only words anyone used. And it fulfilled communication for every possible purpose. If someone needed more water, they just said Krishna, and somebody brought him water. Whatever a devotee wanted to communicate, just Krishna, Krishna, and anybody in the entire temple understood exactly what each one was thinking about and talking about. This is a very intimate form of yoga. Yoga means union. Because they were chanting the holy names in such a common spirit of pleasing the Lord. Their hearts literally became one. Through the medium of the name of Krishna, whatever thoughts, whatever they wanted to express was perfectly communicated to everyone else. There was no need for any other language. Just Krishna, Krishna. Through Krishna's name, everything could be understood. In this way they washed and they washed and they washed. Then they opened up the channels and all the water came pouring out into the courtyards. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the devotees with their own clothes, they were polishing everything that they washed with thousands of buckets of water. There was one incident where this one Bengali devotee, he secretly came behind Lord Chaitanya and poured water on Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet. Then caught the water and drank it. Lord Chaitanya wanted to teach the etiquette of a devotee. Devotees don't like when people do that to them. Especially in the temple of the Lord. He called Swarup Damodar Goswami and he said, "Look at what your Bengali Vaishnav has done. He has implicated me in a great difficulty by making this offense of washing my feet in the temple of the Lord and drinking that water. What will become of me?" Swarup Damodar Goswami very gently took that devotee by the neck and escorted him out. Then he came back and he begged Lord Chaitanya to forgive him. Actually, Lord Chaitanya was not angry, but he wanted to teach people. the proper behavior. And in the process, Srila Prabhupada explains something very interesting. When Lord Chaitanya said to that Bengali, when he said to Swarup Damodar, "You're Bengali devotee," he wanted to establish the principle of parampara. That whoever is a devotee of the Supreme Lord, in Lord Chaitanya's line, is a devotee of the devotee of the devotee. We are all the property of the predecessor Vaishnav Acharyas. Then when the temple was so shining clean, it is said that it was as pure and spotless as the pacified, peaceful mind of the Lord himself. Now, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he explains the significance of the cleaning of the Gundicha temple. We have all heard, as kindred spirits, Gaurvani Prabhu, Ananta Govinda Prabhu, Achyuta Gopi Devi, Janaki Priya Devi, sometimes Jahnavi Devi, and all of these great souls. This song, Mama Mana Mandira, it's a song about worshiping the Lord within the temple of the mind. Lord Chaitanya wanted to teach us that our mind must be perfectly clean in order to receive the Lord within our hearts. Sarvasya chaham hriti shani vishto matasmitir jnanam apohanam cha. The Lord is seated within the heart of every living being as the Paramatma, but reveals himself in proportion to our devotion. And what is devotion? Bhakti yoga is the process of cleaning our hearts. When our heart is clean, when the Lord sees the earnestness and the sincerity of our efforts to clean the heart. Srinbatam swakata Krishna punja sravana kirtanam hridyantasto hyabhadrani vidunoti. This means when we actually gain a taste for hearing the glories of the Lord and chanting the glories of the Lord, when Krishna really sees that we are earnest and sincere about cleaning our hearts, then this impossible job, by the Lord's own grace, he cleanses the heart and reveals himself. Sometimes it can be a hopeless endeavor. Year after year after year, we're trying to clean our hearts by hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. The water is like the name of the Lord, to cleanse the heart of all the dust, the dirt, and the straw of the anarthas, the unwanted things, arrogance, greed, selfish passions of lust, envy, anger, illusion, the desire to be the controller, the proprietor, the desire for name and fame. Na danam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye. Mama janmani janmanishwari bhavatad bhakti rahoita kitvai. Lord Chaitanya offered this prayer. It's a prayer for a pure heart. I do not want all wealth, nor do I want the lovely association of the opposite sex, nor do I desire fame or prestige or even liberation from suffering. I only want to serve you birth after birth after birth. Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karmanya navitam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakta uttama. Rupa Goswami describes pure devotional service is the desire to favorably serve the Supreme Lord without even a tinge of desire for material sense enjoyment, fruitive activities, for mystic perfections, or even liberation, mukti. We only want to serve with love. Mama mana mandire. The Lord will reveal himself within our hearts. And the Lord will clean all of this if he simply sees that we are sincere and earnest. The holy name, the holy glories of the Lord, hearing and chanting is like the water, but it won't work properly unless we first sweep it with the broom. The broom is menial, humble, selfless service attitude. To be the servant of the servant of the servant. A simple sweeper for the Lord. When we put these together, the sweeping and the washing, the broom and the water, some of us for many years have been trying, but still these desires are so deep-seated, these attachments, these illusions. Is there ever an end to it? Have any of you ever had any experience like this? If so, please chant Haribol. Haribol! Does it sometimes seem hopeless? It is, for you and me. But if the Paramatma, Krishna in our heart, just sees that we are sincere, he cleans the heart for us. Another example in this cleansing of Gundicha is the devotees were trying their best, but Lord Chaitanya, he cleaned 1,000 times more than them. He was more enthusiastic than all of them put together. Similarly, Prabhupada said, if we just take one step to Krishna, Krishna is willing to take hundreds of steps to you. If we're just really enthusiastic and patient in following the principles of pure bhakti, to clean our heart, if we just do the best we can, Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paryupashyate tesham nitya vayuktangyam yogakshemam vaham yaham. If we just surrender like this, Krishna says, I will preserve whatever little you have and I will carry what you lack. Just persevere sincerely, honestly, earnestly. And Krishna himself, he'll clean our heart, as if he has hundreds and hundreds of hands. Because his love for us is unlimited, and he wants to see us unlimitedly more than we could ever want to see him. He just wants to see that we're sincere. Mama mana mandire. And when the heart is clean, and we invite Krishna, and Krishna reveals himself. Sri Radharani and Murlidhar, not only do they reveal themselves within their heart, within our hearts, but in doing so, they reveal themselves everywhere. Krishna says in Gita, for one who sees me everywhere and everything in me, I am never lost, nor is that person ever lost to me. Unless we see Krishna within our heart, we can't really see him on the altar. Radharani is standing, blessing us. When our heart is pure and we see the altar, we actually could hear Murlidhar's flute playing, just for you. He's playing just for you, to attract your hearts and your love. And Sri Radharani's hand is blessing with her infinite compassion. You, personally. We can experience that. And we can experience the presence of Krishna in the heart of every living being with love. And we can experience Krishna everywhere, in everything. Because everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy. This is the ever-increasing ecstasy of devotion, when our hearts are pure. After cleaning the Gundicha temple in this way, Lord Chaitanya went outside to the temple next door, a Narasimha temple, and they cleaned that thoroughly the same way. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began Nam Kirtan, chanting and dancing. And he saw the little son of Advaitacharya. He cried out, "Gopal, chant and dance." Gopal, infused by the will of the Lord, leapt into the air, began to chant and dance. Suddenly he fell to the ground, lifeless. His father, Sri Advaita Prabhu, he placed his son on his lap. There was no breath, there was no heartbeat. He loudly chanted the holy names to revive his son. Suddenly this was an emergency, it was a crisis. All the devotees assembled, they gathered around in a massive circle, this little boy, and they were all chanting and chanting from their hearts of hearts, "Krishna, bring this child back to us." But the child laid there, lifeless. Then Advaitacharya began to cry. And all the devotees began to cry. This is an interesting analogy. It's a history, but we can understand an analogy from it. Krishna says in Gita, "Nahanyate hanyamane sarire." The soul is not dead when the body dies. Asochanan vasoshas. That a learned person does not lament either for the living or the dead, because one understands that the eternal soul never dies. It's only the body, that we just change clothes. That's what death is about. So why would a self-realized person cry? Here is Advaitacharya, who is Sadashiva, the original Shiva, Mahavishnu, the original Purusha avatar of this creation. And also the Acharya, the greatest, most worshipable of all the devotees. And he's crying because his son died. And all the other devotees, Nityananda, Balaram, Swarup Damodar Goswami, Lalita Sakhi, they're all crying. Because becoming a devotee doesn't mean you lose your humanness. It means you make your humanness totally transcendental. They were not crying because the child, they understood that the soul was eternal. But when a soul is in the body of a devotee, there's so much love for that devotee. You know that that soul's going back to Krishna, and that brings happiness. But for the rest of our lives, we don't have the physical presence of that soul, of that devotee anymore, who's enthusing us so much. And therefore there is tears. So as all the devotees were lamenting the apparent death of this child, Lord Chaitanya walked right up to him, placed his hand on the child's chest, and loudly cried out, "Gopal, stand up!" And Gopal stood up and then continued his dance. When everyone saw this, there was a tumultuous, resounding sound of Haribo. Everyone was leaping in the air in ecstatic joy, chanting to the holy names. After this profound kirtan, Lord Chaitanya sat everyone in lines to distribute prasad. The end of every great festival, there is prasad. And it was so nice because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself would like to serve the prasad. But he was so enthusiastic to please his devotees that his one hand full would put what at least 5 devotees could eat on each plate. And he would just put handful after handful. Swarup Damodar Goswami said, no one will eat until you eat. So please, you sit down, let us serve. And it is so interesting that the most highly respected, advanced Paramhamsa devotees were the ones that were serving the prasad. Swarup Damodar Goswami, Jagadananda Pandit, Damodar Pandit, Shankar Pandit. According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, these are all perfected devotees in the Madhurya Ras, the highest level of the gopis' love for Krishna. Intimate, eternal associates of the Lord. And then there was Govinda and Kashishwar, who were the personal servants of Lord Chaitanya's guru. They were the disciples of Ishwara Puri. Very high state. But yet they were serving the prasad to everyone, the pilgrims, the devotees, with great happiness. And Gopinathacharya was another prasad server, the brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And they were all, Lord Chaitanya was on a little bit higher platform and he had Sarvabhauma sitting next to him. And and Gopinathacharya brought all kinds of succulent sweets of Jagganath's Mahaprasad to Jagganath, to his brother-in-law. And then Gopinathacharya said, just see, just a few days ago, he was a hard-hearted logician who was just chewing the dry rice cakes of impersonal conceptions. But now he is relishing the ecstasy of Jagannath's Mahaprasad. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, it is only because I have the association of someone like you. In this way, the devotees were all praising each other. And the festival came to an end. The next morning was Netrotsava. That means the festival for the eyes. Now, to understand this festival, we have to go into a little of the history of Ratha Yatra. On the full moon day, just a fortnight before the Ratha Yatra, is the Snan Yatra. It is considered the appearance day of Lord Jagganath. So they give him Abhishekam. They bathe him with scented water and milk and yogurt and ghee and honey and sugar water from cane and cow dung and cow urine and so many other things. And they have thousands of buckets of this water and milk that they bathe him in to celebrate his birthday. And afterward, for the sake of his divine pastimes, as Yogyakarusha Prabhu was explaining, the Lord appears to have a fever from being bathed all day. If you were being bathed in all day in all those substances, you would probably get sick too. Because they bathe him practically all day long. So the Lord wants to be like a person to his devotees, to give opportunity to serve. So from that time, the Dayatapatis, they take charge of the Lord from Snanyatra on until the Lord returns to his throne in the Jagganath temple. And they give him infusions of medicine in the form of fruit juices. And the Lord is not allowed to be seen by anyone except the Dayatapatis for 15 days. Now during those 15 days, Lord Chaitanya would go to a place called Alalanath, where there's an ancient deity worshipped by the Alwars of South India long ago. And there, in separation from the Lord, if you go there, you'll see the rock that he used to lay on. And you will see the imprints of his body in that rock. Because in his separation, it was so intense that the rock melted underneath him. The evidence is still there. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come when all the devotees from Navadvip and other places would arrive. He would give them their rooms and give them prasad. Then he would celebrate the Gundicha cleaning of the temple. And then the next day was the first darshan that Lord Jagganath gives. Now Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would usually stand way, way behind the Jagan Mohan, the Kirtan and Darshan hall, where the Garuda Stamba was. But on the day of Netrotsava, he came right into Jagannath's altar where the food was offered with all of his devotees. Because the separation of 15 days, he could not follow this etiquette of being behind Garuda Stamba. And he first saw Lord Jagganath. It describes his eyes were like two bumblebees, gazing into Lord Lord Jagannath's eyes, which were like flowers filled with honey. And Lord Chaitanya was drinking that nectar, unblinking, hour after hour after hour. From the early morning when it was still dark till the afternoon, he just stood there gazing in the beautiful eyes of Jagganath with all the devotees. And finally, they went back to their places to prepare themselves for the Ratha Yatra the next day. Should I continue? They got up very early in the morning. And the celebration began with the Pandu Vijaya, where Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra are carried from their thrones in the temple of Puri onto their chariots. Something like what Gerald is doing with his son. Now, for those of you who've been to Puri, you understand what it means to carry Lord Jagannath. He's very enormous. There's probably 20 people simultaneously carrying him. And they have these beautiful silk ropes around different parts of his body to help lift him. And there are some people under his feet, and some people that behind his back, and some people at his shoulders, and some people behind his head, and people on all sides of him, and people trying to lift his arms. And they can only carry him a few inches at a time before they stop. And he has this special crown made out of a certain type of very fine bamboo straw and different pulp from the banana tree and other flowers and decorations. Very high crown. And as he walks, he's going from, as they're carrying him, he's moving from side to side and back and forth and side to side like a person who's completely intoxicated. Here in New York City, I think you see this a lot. Especially on First Avenue on a weekend night. When people, they're not walking, they're staggering from side to side and back and forth. I was there for Ratha Yatra a couple times, and first time I was amazed to see how Jagganath was moving. And because there's so many people around him, I was thinking they must practice a lot to coordinate themselves to make Jagganath move like that, like he's totally intoxicated. And I asked one of the chief pujaris who was holding him. And really, if you see them when they're trying to move Jagganath, they're grunting and they're groaning and they're sweating like anything, trying to move the Lord. And I asked Ram Kumar, Dayatapati, you know, how do you, what is the word? Choreograph that for Jagganath to move like that when there's so many of you? He said, it's Jagganath moving like that. We're just all struggling to hold him still. He said it with utter sincerity. He said, Jagganath is so intoxicated and so enthusiastic about going back to Gundicha temple, which represents Vrindavan, that's his state. We're just trying to carry him and hold him. And he's moving, and he's moving. It's out of control. And it takes, every year is different. Sometimes it takes almost an hour to carry him from the door of Jagganath's temple to get on his chariot. And to get up his chariot, he has to go up this ramp, which they make right there just before he comes. They take all these logs and they pile them this way, and then they pile them this way. And they're carrying Jagganath up the ramp. And one year when I was there, about 3/4 the way up, he starts going backward. And they're trying to lift him up, and he just keeps going down like this, and they're going like this, and you can see they're struggling, they're pulling ropes, and they're pushing their shoulders into him, and they're pushing their arms into him, and they get reinforcement, and they're behind him going like this, and he keeps going back. Until, they're all on their hands and knees holding him, and he's just laying on top of them. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.